So, I'm closing out the day, and I'm going to say things you're probably going to disagree with. My goal is, when I'm done, you're going to have one of two beliefs. One is, I am a complete moron who doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Or, wow, that is a really cool idea. I should do that instead. If we do 50-50 split, that's totally fine. But you're probably going to have one of those opinions. So this is a little bit controversial, I get it, and the big green is one. That's what I want, right there. All right, so I'm an enablement leader at a company called Redis. We sell database software, basically. And a little bit of background on me. I've had 4 different careers. Career number 1, motivational speaker. Career number 2, politics. Don't ever do it. Terrible. Soul crushing. Bad, bad, bad. Career number 3, I was a full cycle seller for a number of years, and that's not the companies I worked for. Those are sort of the notches on my belt, my logo slide, if you will. But for the last 8 years, I've been leading enablement teams, mostly at high growth tech startups on the path to IPO. And I like to include a little bit about context of sort of the size of the teams and how big are my sales teams and those sorts of things. So, because I know some people have like one-person shops with 20 salespeople, and some people have, 25,000 sellers. Currently at Redis, I've been here for 3.5 years, and our enablement team is about 9 people, and we serve about 215 sellers when you count SDRs, AEs, SAs. So that's who I am. So I'm going to ask you to do a little exercise with me, and you can use paper or computer or whatever you want, but I'm going to ask you to just write down a handful, 3 or 4 metrics that you and your team pay attention to right now for your enablement efforts. Just write them down and put them on your computer, whatever you want to do. And you are going to have to write things next to these. That's why you do want to write them down. All right. Next to that, next to each one of those, write down your personal assessment of, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is each of those metrics to your sales leaders? 1, not important, not very important. 5, they love it, it's super important to them. For each of those ones, rate it on a scale of 1 to 5 of how important you think it is to your sales leader. All right. Next one. This is a tougher one. For each of those metrics, on a scale of 1 to 5, how strong of an argument can you make that your team, directly influence that metric? You directly influence it going, up or down. Your direct influence on each of those metrics. Last one, multiply those 2 together. Multiply column 2 by column 3. The ones that are the highest over on your far right, that sort of multiplying 2 together, what do those have in common? How would you categorize some of the things that those 2 or 3 have in common, the highest ones? What's that? Importance to sales leader. Sure, important to sales leader. That's probably not the only thing. I'm going to speculate. Oh.
I was just going to say mine have money in common.
Have money in common, sure, because it helps people make money. I'm going to speculate that onboarding, it might be a little bit of an exception, but outside of onboarding, most of the ones that have the highest numbers are the ones that involve tactical workflow of sellers, things that they are doing tactically. Not like win rates and those kinds of things, but tactical things they are doing. So, most of you, and I'm sure you've seen this in your own work, and you've seen it in the sessions yesterday and today. There's lots of stuff you're doing. You have lots of enablement programs and training activities. You're training on all sorts of things, and then you measure those. You measure sort of whether people like the training, whether they learn stuff, and then you're looking at sort of the long-term impact results, sort of the business results, if you will. Are we increasing average contract value? Are we improving win rates? All those kinds of things. And then you go to your sales leader and say, hey, look at all this awesome stuff we did. Look at the results we produced. And then what kind of response do you get from your sales leader when you present those numbers? Are you really sure that was you? I don't know. We did a lot of other things. It's kind of a weak argument you're making that you had a direct influence on increasing this contract value or improving win rate, right? They don't believe you. They don't believe that you had a direct influence on them. You can try really hard, but you all know there's no causal relationship. The most you can make is correlational, and to most sales leaders, that's BS. So, here's my modest proposal. How to think about metrics differently. Short version is measuring workflow is better for your careers and for your team, and probably for your company, than measuring long-term business outcomes. And when I say workflow, I think like sales motions, sales procedures, sort of tactical things they're doing, all right? And a longer version of that is you and your team become deep experts, intimately familiar with all the things each sales role does. Like literally, what are they clicking on their computers? If you're SDRs, literally, how are you prospecting? How are you putting people in a sequence? If you're an AE, literally, what do you do to prepare for a discovery call? What do you do during that discovery call? All those things, the tactical things they do on a day-to-day basis, become intimately familiar with those, be the expert on that for all the roles you serve. So I'm going to have it like a 6-step process here. So first, learn as much as you can about all those different things. Each role, day-to-day basis, what are they tactically doing in order to achieve their compensation goals, get their variable compensation? Again, understanding what their click path is on their computer, understand what they even like what on the phone, what are they saying at different stages of the customer journey. I skipped one, I think. Can we go back one? Huh. What's going on here? So this is moving, but not that. I'm selecting the big green button. Is anybody back there? All right. How y'all doing? I don't, maybe, we'll see. I don't know. Okay. That's the wrong one. Okay. Oh, wait. So, hold on. This is weird. The slides are in the weird order. So what I mean by like workflows, if I'm saying become familiar and be the experts on the workflow, this is just some examples. I'm sure each of you have different things, but if you're SDR role, for example, there are things that you are doing to identify which accounts you're going to target and what people you're going to target, and then you in either outreach or sales loft or something like that, you're probably putting people in a sequence or cadence. They're doing that sort of thing. And then they're executing their sales tasks. They're making phone calls, they're sending emails, they're doing LinkedIn stuff. And then they're trying to schedule meetings. And so like within each of those broad categories of things they're doing, there are like tactical workflows that they have to do and become intimately familiar with what it takes to do each of those. What's the click path for putting someone to a sequence? What's the process and procedure for scheduling a meeting with their AE? All those tactical things. And if you're doing this for AEs, there's obviously different, but they're doing some account planning and account strategizing. All right, so are they required to create account plans? How do they do that? What tool do they use? Where do they put it when they're done? They're having to do some prioritization of which accounts they want to focus on. They have to schedule meetings, and if you have like any product-led growth sort of stuff, they have to think about what they're gonna do when they get these signals of product growth from their prospects and customers. Top of funnel, sometimes they're doing some prospecting, then they're doing discovery and qualifications, and there's like tactical things they're doing there, and then they're managing their opportunities, and they're doing POCs, maybe they're having a proposal meeting, and then when we get to the end, they're having to deal with deal desk and also all those sorts of things. So what are the procedures, the tactical workflows they're doing throughout the customer journey, the way they are interacting with customers and interacting with their tools internally? So the reason this is valuable is you can create a metric framework and measure how you can influence each of those specific things. Now, each of these individual things probably isn't the single most important thing to any of your sales managers or sales leaders, but collectively, they are. If you can show them, I can move the needle on 3 of these, they're gonna go, oh shit, hadn't thought about it like that. That's pretty cool. So you look at the specific motions, workflows they're doing, and create a metric framework. So here's an example of how I think about it, creating a metric framework from my team. I prefer to think about funnels. Like any sales role has a funnel. They're doing things up the top, and then some of those they do these things, and then some of those they do these things, and some of those they do these things, right? For AEs, it's mostly like sales process. For SDRs, it's like, here's the accounts we're gonna target. Here's ones who I actually do stuff with. Here's ones who respond to me. Here's ones that take a meeting, that kind of thing, right? And then for each of those, I figure out what metrics are important to the managers and the SDRs, and that we can influence, that our team can tactically influence those. And then I say, is that a quantity thing? Like, we need to measure how many they're doing? Is it a quality thing? Like, we're measuring how well they're doing it? Or is it a kind of process and procedure and playbook thing? Are they doing it the way we want them to? All right? So I literally created a table like this for each of the roles, and each of those sample metrics literally has sample metrics. And I just threw together some of them for examples for AEs. And you'll remember that the red for them is the kind of account planning and strategy. The yellow is the top of the funnel. The green is opportunity management, and the last one at the bottom is basically like closed deals. And I'm sure these will be different for you. These are some examples that we care about. But I guarantee managers, again, there's no one on here that managers or leaders think are the single most important thing, but collectively they're super important. So you pick the ones that you can influence, and then, if possible, figure out how can we measure those things. If one of those bullets on there is going up and to the right somehow, how would we know that? How would we measure that? And I know getting insights and data into this can be tricky for enablement teams. You can kind of rig it yourself sometimes if you happen to have access to Salesforce reports or Tableau or something like that. We're really lucky that we have a really strong relationship with our RevOps team. And so we get to create our own dashboards, actually. So here's an example of one we did for SDRs. So for SDRs, and this is specifically for cold calling. We have other dashboards for other sorts of things they do. But for cold calling, think about it from SDR, there are, at the top of my funnel here, there are calls that I'm making. I'm logging calls. Some of those, I actually connect with the person I'm trying to call. Some of those, I have a meaningful conversation. And some of those result in a meeting. The conversion rates from layer to layer are super important. I want to pay attention to those conversions from layer to layer because I want to increase those conversions. And if I can increase those conversions, that shows I'm making a difference and I'm adding value to the company, right? So here's a dashboard we've got. This is literally a screenshot from our dashboard in Salesforce. So that top row is the calls logged. So like 178,000 calls logged. And then so the first column there is like for each of those layers of the funnel, it is the benchmark. It includes the benchmark. What's good? So like the connect rates, you'll see that 6.3% there. That is kind of the average percent for the team, but I color code that so that number right there, 6.3, happens to be good because it's green. But I can color code it so that if the average for the team is bad, it's red. So like you can see down below the 48%, like the meaningful conversation rate is they're only 48% of the times they talk to someone do they have meaningful conversation. And that's not good. And then the last one, of the ones that you have a meaningful conversation with, what percent do you actually book a meeting, right? And that's in yellow. And then the next column is, okay, if that's what's good, and then the next question is who's doing well and who's not? Who specifically, which specific people are doing bad and well at each of these layers of the funnel, right? And so you'll see the green, yellow, red sort of thing there. And then, are we getting better over time or worse? So having a benchmark for what's good and bad, a leaderboard for who's doing well and who's not, and then a trend line of how things are getting better or worse. This is an exceptional way to convey a story to your sales leaders. You can do this in any sort of reporting framework, whether Tableau or Moodle, whatever the different ones out there. But this is how I like to tell a story, ensuring that the dashboard itself includes these kind of elements. And here's one we do for AEs. This particular one, it doesn't include sort of a funnel imagery because it's not like going down through the layers of a funnel, but it's just looking at 3 different metrics. So contact roles, deal health, and activity. So this is a GIF. I'm going to let the GIF sort of cycle through to the top here. Come on, cycle through. I'll wait to roll up to the top. All right, so the top row there says average number of contact roles on 1 opportunities. Anybody who's worked with Salesforce know that you have a Salesforce opportunity, you have to have at least 1 person associated with it. And you, as enablement people, you know that it's great to multi-thread in an opportunity, right? You're not just selling to 1 person, you're selling to lots of people. The way you do that in Salesforce is you make sure that you've got multiple people attached to it on contact roles. So we pay attention to what is the average number of people each rep has attached to opportunities. And so you'll see there, I have it actually for each rep, what's the average number they have, and color-coded red, yellow, green. And then over on the right, I have the timeline for how that overall metric is doing, is getting better or worse. The middle one there, average deal health alignment. So we built our own custom sales methodology. It is both a deal qualification tool and a sales methodology combined, all integrated natively into Salesforce. We look at 57 different metrics. Some of them are captured automatically by the system. Some are manually typed in by the rep. But collectively, they all contribute to a score and give a rating to the manager on whether this deal is healthy or not healthy. And so what that says is 78.6% is our average health. Ideally, you want 100% health. So this is average health. And then I have them rated by each rep. Are they red, yellow, green? And then I see whether they're getting better or worse over time. And then the one at the very bottom, that as the GIF cycles through, you'd be able to see it, is percent of accounts with activity logged in the last 60 days. All right? Our reps have assigned accounts in their name, and what percent of that book of business are they actively engaging with at any given time. So we look at that. And unfortunately, that one's tricky to actually do a trend line on. So I couldn't figure out how to do it, but we just have to. I have to literally take a screenshot of that one and then take a screenshot again 30 days later, because sometimes it's tricky to do trend lines in Salesforce. But those are a couple examples of how we think about. So we look at the metric framework. What are the metrics that we care about for each role that we can influence as a team? Let's create dashboards that tell us sort of what our starting point is, and then we go to the leaders and say, hey, we agree that these are some important metrics that you would like our team to focus on. Looking at these reports and dashboards, we're seeing that here are 2 or 3 priority areas we think we should focus on. Do you agree? All right. Just listen, and we don't want to focus on 37 of them. Just want to focus on a couple of them, 2 or 3. And then you can give specific things. Say, hey, I think we should focus on these 2 or 3. And for those 2 or 3 where the metrics are bad, here's how we might think about trying to improve that. What the coaching conversation might look like. And here's an example of that. So in that SDR outbound call thing, I had here's a number of calls, here's a number of connects, that kind of thing. So if, for the people who are in the red on the number of logged calls, they're not making a lot of calls, what's the coaching conversation? That conversation is around, hey, let's block some time on your calendar and let's make sure that you're confident to make calls. You're not too nervous to make calls. Have that sort of conversation. If the issue with that SDR is more about your connect rate is bad, you got plenty of calls, but your connect rates are way worse than the others, that's a different conversation. That one I'm saying, hey, what time of day are you calling? Let's go look in outreach and let's see what the time of day have the best connect rates. I'm also saying, what kind of contact data do you have? I know you're probably using Zoom Info, you're probably using Lucia, but are you sure you're getting the direct dials? You're not just using the HQ numbers, right? That's kind of conversation. If I look at the next layer here, the ones who have the poor meaningful conversation rate, like their connect rates are probably fine, but they're not having good conversations, then that conversation, the coaching conversation we're having with them is around the first 20 to 30 seconds of the call. You're not getting that prospect to engage with you. Let's look at the framework we use for our outbound call framework, and let's kind of coach on that. And then the last layer is, all right, what if they have conversations, but they're not closing the deal? They're not closing the deal, meaning getting the meeting, right? That one is probably around something like objection handling, or just being confident to ask for the meeting. So you'll see that the reason I love thinking about like really detailed metrics is the coaching conversation is different for each one of those. And because we can have those coaching conversations, we can say with confidence that we're having a direct influence on achieving the sort of that metric going up and to the right. And then if you say, hey, we'd like to focus on these and here's what we'd like to do about them, and they say, fine, great, let's go make sure that we have an intervention program. We're doing something to address specifically, tactically, those 2 or 3 things. You go say, hey, leadership, you cool with this approach we want to do? Yep, okay. And then we repeat, we reinforce. We have them demonstrate that they know how to do this thing. And then once that's over, you come back to leadership and say, hey, look at that dashboard again. The thing went up and to the right. Aren't we awesome? Pretty easy to make an argument that you directly influence that thing, right? Now, is that one specific metric going to change the business? Probably not. But you start doing enough of those over time, guarantee you're going to get the confidence of leadership that you're doing something positive for the business, and they're going to feel more likely, more eager to believe you when you say, we helped increase contract value. We helped improve win rates. You got to do a lot of the smaller tactical things first before they believe the other shit. All right, am I a moron? Damn it. No morons? Come on. I think that was it. What do you think? You see yourself being able to do something like this? Probably on a smaller scale, obviously. Yeah.
What constitutes a meaningful conversation?
Good question. The question is what constitutes a meaningful conversation? In that specific dashboard I was showing for SDRs having, doing the cold calling and that kind of thing, it's based on call dispositions. So in Outreach or in SalesLoft, after you finish the call, you have to choose from a pick list of what the outcome was. And we've designed the pick list values to be so that it tells you whether did you speak with the person? If you did speak with the person, did you speak for more than 30 seconds? What was sort of the nature of the call? So it's possible for there to be human error there, but they are indicating in their call disposition whether they had a meaningful conversation. For AEs, can you walk us through a coaching example based on the activities in their dashboard? So one of the examples on there was contact roles, all right? It's honestly a big thing for us right now. It's kind of embarrassing to me that we don't do a whole lot of multi-threading, right? We'll have our one person who's our champion. We don't really sell very well. So let's look at the people who are sort of on the lower end there and say, what can we do to ensure that they are having conversations with more people. All right, so tactically that looks like you're at the end of the call, before you hang up, hey, who else should we bring on the next call? You guys know this stuff, right? This is simple, but that's the conversation you're having. Hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Rep, I'm not asking you to change your world. I'm asking you at the end of the call to ask who to bring on the next one. That's an example of a conversation.
I'm curious if, when it comes to like reporting like that, you've got some really advanced stuff in Salesforce. I think that's awesome. Have you considered like a BI tool for more of that time-based trend analysis?
We have Tableau, but the assholes won't let me use it. I have to go submit a ticket for them to build it for me. Like, no, I'm going to build it myself. So it would be a lot easier to do this in Tableau, but they won't let me do it. Who has the coaching conversation? So we're lucky that our enablement team has people focused on specific roles, like SDR enablement, AE enablement, CSR enablement, that sort of thing. So in our world, it's the enablement person having those coaching conversations directly one-on-one with the seller. But I know that doesn't happen a lot. So in that case, it's you as the enablement leader who goes to the manager and says, hey, I would encourage you to this because it'd be easier for you to scale that way when the manager has that conversation rather than you. That's why I like doing that documentation on if the metric is low on this specific thing, here's the coaching conversation. If it's low on this specific thing, here's the conversation. Yeah.
It's a little bit of an obvious question, but I think it's helpful. If you're getting away from attribution error in this model, how do you compensate in your dashboard for non-compliance with using the tool?
Non-compliance, well, if they're not using the tool, they're going to be in the red on the dashboard.
That's simple.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I'm on a mission to evolve the enablement profession to focus more on operational workflow things. I think that is the way for us to gain a lot more credibility, to have a lot more influence on the sales org itself, and improve our own careers. And if you can have an analyst on your team, I'm telling you, 5 years from now, an enablement team without an analyst is going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Why don't you have an analyst on your team? All right. Peace out.